And also today we just recently learned of the passing of Dr. Joseph Marr Cronin, who is the brother of our former town administrator, John Cronin. And he also made many contributions that will live on after him. Massachusetts Governor Frank Sargent named Dr. Cronin the Commonwealth's first Secretary of Educational Affairs in 1971. And he also assumed the role of president of Massachusetts Higher Education Assistance Corporation in 1980, and served as the 5th president of Bentley College, which is now Bentley University. And he was president for 6 years. And our thoughts and prayers go out to the family. So if we could please have a moment of silence. Thank you. And I think we're all aware of the brief but blustery storm. And Mr. Dennehy is going to make an announcement.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. So obviously it was very brief but powerful. Public Works has several crews out throughout town. There are some very large trees down, some with wires involved. Eversource has their emergency teams set up. So we do ask that anyone with a limb or tree down, call DPW 617-898-4900. They have crews actively responding. Also ask that if anyone comes across a downed or hanging wire, not to touch them at all, but rather call 911 and we'll get in touch with the utilities. And just know that it's probably going to be a long night for the Public Works folks. Some of the trees that I saw in my neighborhood are sizable. I think the primary is to make sure that we get these downed dangerous wires sorted first, and then any tree that may be blocking a roadway so that our public safety teams can get down these roads. But I ask for people's patience. Good night to sit in and watch a not Red Sox baseball game or something like that. If you have internet and cable access, we are hearing reports of some internet and cable problems throughout town as well. But just know that the town public safety team, including Public Works, which I've always considered the silent arm of public safety, is out there tonight trying to restore power and clear these roadways. And if you do see me fidgeting with the phone, it's a text coming in or out from our teams trying to coordinate some of the stuff. So having said that, I know, Madam Chair, on the agenda, we have Chief Madden was going to come in for his Milton Fire Department quarterly report. Chief Madden is actually headed to headquarters, so if I could ask that we defer that agenda item until October 21st, it would be much appreciated.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr.
If I may, just for people in the town center area, if they're thinking about going out, there are trees blocking parts of Reedsdale. There are trees blocking Fairbanks. There's a tree blocking Fairbanks. There's a tree blocking Taylor. There's a tree blocking Magnolia. So all around the town center, there are huge trees blocking those roads. So if you're going to go out, well, probably shouldn't go out, but just be really careful around those areas because those roads are blocked right now.
Right, and that driving to town hall, there were a lot of limbs to go around. So yes, I echo that. Be very careful when you're driving if you absolutely have to go out. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So now we're moving on to a public meeting for applications for Keno licenses at 98 Houston Avenue and 590 Randolph Avenue. So on September 15th, we received a letter from Mass State Lottery Commission, and just letting us know about these two applications for two separate 7-Eleven locations. And part of the process now is for the applicant to have a chance to come in and make a statement before the board considers the what its next action will be. Do we have someone from representing the applicants with us this evening? I see there are a number of attendees.
Madam Chair, if I might, we did confirm that the certified letters were sent to both 7-Elevens.
Right.
And just for the edification of the viewing audience, there are 7 establishments in Milton that have the ability to sell lottery tickets. 6 of those 7 have what's called Keno on the go, which means you can play Keno and take the ticket with you. I believe these applications to qualify for a television monitor in these 7-Elevens to actually play Keno and watch the live drawings. And again, we don't have any of these in these towns, but just looking at the list of attendees here, I'm not sure if any of these people here are here to testify, or if we should just have the board discuss their thoughts. Our letters to the lottery are due on October 11th, I believe.
So let me just invite people in the attendees. If one of you is here to represent the applicant, you can raise your hand. If you're on Zoom, by going down to the bottom of your screen and then raising your hand. Otherwise, if you're, I don't think anyone's on phone, but that would be *9 to raise your hand. So, okay.
Madam Chair, do you want to add that it's through the participant, that they have to click on that?
Oh, that's
in case someone is not aware of how to do this.
Yes, so you would have to click participant, and then you would see a place where you could raise your hand.
I'm just wondering whether Mr. or Ms. I just lost my screen. Parker Chiva or Mr. Corcoran might be here for this matter.
I think if Mr. Corcoran were, he would have button. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll keep an eye on that to see if a hand goes up while we're discussing it. So basically, the matter at hand is whether we would decide to issue a written objection to the Mass State Lottery Commission on this application for a Keno license at both 98 Houston and 590 Randolph Ave. Does anyone have any comments or questions?
I do. Just trying to get my screen correct here. So, Madam Chair, the board, as you know, as we all know, the board previously objected to an application filed for Randolph Avenue for the Tedeschi, or the 7-Eleven at Randolph Avenue. And that was back in 2017. Some of our grounds were that it's a residential neighborhood store. It was a heavily trafficked area. Children and young people were in the store, and that there hadn't been any demand among residents, that the board at that time had not had any demand for Keno. The type that we're talking about, as Mike described, not the not the card that you can buy and just take out of the ticket you can buy and take out of the store, but the game in which you'd have an opportunity to sit in the store. So there had been no demand for that. And Houston, the 7-Eleven on Houston Ave did not file at that time, but I think the same facts really exist there as well. That particular Tedeschi on Houston Avenue is frequented often by students to and from school. There's a lot of young people who are in the school. It is a residential area. It's also a residential neighborhood store. And again, I'm not aware of any demand. I've never heard any demand from anyone asking that the board support or advocate for Keno to be in any of the stores in Milton. So I continue to be opposed to both of them on those grounds. I am a customer in those stores. I use both of those 7-Elevens from time to time, and they're great convenience stores, but I do not support Keno, and would like the board to file a written objection and seek a hearing on the matter.
Thank you. Do other members wish to ask a question or make a statement? Mr. Zulus?
I agree with that view, and I will add that the fact that neither of the applicants are here to describe how they're going to use the machine, why they want the machine, and how it will fit not only in the store but into the neighborhood, also colors my view of this. I'm not generally in favor of it anyway, because there hasn't been, as Katie said, there hasn't been a demand for it, and I don't know that the fact that the applicants aren't here to tell us, why it's needed, how it will work, suggests to me that I'm in favor of the objection as well.
Thank you. Mr. Doyle or Mr. Wells? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with both. The only thing, to Mr. Zulus's point, I don't think there's any, I think the fact that they have Keno, I think the machines are already in there. I think the one change would be, and I looked at a couple that do have it in other community this week, is that most places that do have it have some type of little waiting area where people who play the machines, there would be a screen, like a small TV, where they view them. But they are both extremely busy stores. I was in Houston today. So I think we should I agree with that, my call. I think we should just deny it and then move forward. And if the applicants want to come back at a later time, that's fine.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question. I note that in our proposed motions that it refers to the town administrator. I looked back at some of the prior licenses. It was actually town council that filed the board's written objection letter with the Mass Lottery Commission. And and if there is a hearing, which I don't think there was in previous years, then we'd have town council be the one representing the town. I think we'd have town council, maybe a member of the board, the chair of the town administrator also, but I think the town council would be involved in it. So I think, so I'm going to make a motion that the board file a written objection to the issuance of a Keno license for 7-Eleven 37466 at 590 Randolph Avenue and 7-Eleven 37450 at 98 Avenue, and claim our right to a hearing before the Massachusetts State Lottery Commission and authorize town council to file our objection.
Second.
Thank you. That's also consistent with a conversation that Mr. Dennehy and I had with Kevin Freitag yesterday, that he could draft that. So thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Next, we move on to public comment. And thank you, Hillary. So for those wishing to speak at public comment, please go down to the bottom center of your screen and click raise hand. If you're on the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to toggle mute on and off. And if people would raise their hands now, then I would recognize you and you could give your name and address and make a statement. Okay. Thank you. Seeing none, we will move on. Excellent. Okay. We're on to COVID-19 updates. The first one is just to talk about step 2 of phase 3 reopening in accordance with the Commonwealth Massachusetts reopening plan, and Town Administrator Dennehy will just talk to us about that.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. As many of you know, on Monday, Governor Baker, well, last week he announced it, but Monday, October 5th, it went live that phase 3, step 2 of the reopening for the state of Massachusetts was released. Had several conversations with Health Director Caroline Kinsella. Her team has been working with the businesses in the communities that are affected and informing them and making them understand the guidelines and restrictions, what's still in place, what has been relieved. So she's to be commended not only for all her work with respect to contact tracing and all the work that's going on around the virus itself, the upcoming flu clinic, but in addition, her staff is doing a wonderful job of letting these businesses know what can and can't be done during phase 3 of step 2. For those in the viewing audience who would like to take a closer look, the health department released a nice link on the main page of the town's website. Actually talks about sector specific workplace safety standards, and it itemizes all of them from fitness centers to golf facilities, libraries, restaurants, retail businesses, and basically all the do's and don'ts and updates that have come from the governor and the Department of Public Health. So I want to commend the health department and the Board of Health who've been discussing this stuff. Board of Health met Monday night to talk about a lot of this stuff. So I think the business community in Milton is working well with the health director, and any problems or concerns, people can direct them to my attention at Town Hall. That's about it from phase 2, step 3. Phase 3, step 2, sorry.
Thank you. We do have an update from the Neponset Neighbors Together Fund from Karen Gross Warren. Well, as you might have guessed, the donations have slowed a bit, and there's about $5,000 out of an original $80,000 left, though. So the money's been distributed and being used to benefit people. Also, part of what came out of this is that Concord Baptist, one of our churches in Milton, is now involved in the United Way Thanksgiving Project, which will support about 200 Milton families. So we're very grateful for that. As far as the Milton Residents Fund and our efforts to provide both rent assistance through home funds and also the microenterprise grants. We have 2 recipients so far of microenterprise grants, so that's really positive, and we have, I think, another 5 in the pipeline to be looked at. Also, there are 5 applicants for rental assistance through Metro Housing. It's a bit of a complicated process, but Allison Quinn is really working hard to help everybody with their applications. As far as the Governor Stoughton Noreen Dolan has distributed $85,000, so there's about $24,000 remaining. So I would expect that at some point the Governor Stoughton trustees will need to meet on that. And most of the donations right now are for very high electric and gas bills that don't have necessarily a shut-off notice, but are just getting too high. Also, QCAP has started opening up their fuel assistance program, and so she's helping people connect there as well. And people are looking for sort of bigger items like winter coats and boots and things like that. So if people can help with donations, that would be much appreciated. And we began talking about Halloween, and as Mr.
Madam
Yeah.
Chair, just one point. I just want to go back to
Yes.
the Residence Fund. Just 2 points. A, I want to thank Pastor Shelley Davis and all the people from East Milton, her congregation, who, as you know, most of these operations have had to cease, particularly taking donations, and they ran a great fundraiser both for Quincy Interfaith and for the Milton Food Pantry, inviting neighbors to make donations. I watched it all day. It was a steady stream all day to their church parking lot. So to her staff and her congregation and all the volunteers of both agencies, I think that was well received and a very positive thing for the community. And then second, just to your prior point, particularly with the Milton Residence Fund, Jim Orcott, the director of My Brother's Keeper, was here in Milton last Wednesday night, and he announced that they are committed, that they will hold their holiday. As you know from your trip with me last year, they service and help about 14,000 people between Thanksgiving and Christmas in our area every year. And they are committed to doing that this year, and they are a big help, particularly to the Milton Residence Fund with that, with things like coats and things that people just too often take for granted. So I just thank you for allowing this. I just want to make those 2 points while we're in this subject tonight.
Right. Oh, thank you very much. Thank us for sharing both of those, and thank you to Pastor Shelley and her congregation. So moving on to Halloween, we received a letter from the Board of Health and saying that they support the Centers for Disease Control guidance on Halloween, stating that participating in traditional trick-or-treating, where children go door to door, is considered a really high-risk activity, and to please look at some of the alternatives that are outlined there, or do something that's socially distanced and creative. But that being said, today Governor Baker seemed to be saying something that was slightly contradictory. I don't know if others heard that or saw that.
No.
Well, I thought it was worth mentioning. So he said that he felt that well-supervised trick-or-treating was preferable to indoor parties. So, but I think that for my part, I would go with our Board of Health on this, but thought that we should highlight it since they just had their meeting. Are there any comments or questions from board members?
I have one, Madam Chair. I think it might be prudent of us, if people are not going to participate and have concerns, I think that sending a message, because people are going to come. Mike Denny and I talked about this today, whether they come just from residents of the town. We get a heavy influx from other communities every year. I think that, if people aren't, we should just tell them, turn your lights off, don't be at the front door, and then just to discourage people from coming and knocking, and because there are people who do have concerns, and it's going to be hard for us to stop this for those who do want to go out and try and do it. So that's just one message we may be able to put out. Don't turn your lights on and make it look like your house is open for Halloween if that's not your intention.
Thank you. Mr. Zulus?
I don't think Halloween is for the government to regulate. We can certainly recommend that people follow the CDC guidelines, but I don't think it's something for us to regulate. It's really a private activity. Having said that, I am concerned about the increase in the number of cases and the positivity rate of COVID in Milton over the last few weeks. We were yellow last week. We're yellow again this week. In the yellow means you've had between 4 to 8 cases per 100,000 population over the last 2 weeks for your average daily case rate, right? We've had 30 cases over the last 2 weeks. Our average daily case rate per 100,000 now is 7.5. If you get to 8, then you're in the red. So today, this week, we're at the highest we've ever been. We're at 7.5. We're yellow for the second consecutive week. We've been yellow. This is, I think, the third week out of 6, perhaps 6 or 7 that we've been yellow. We're far too close to red at this point, and so I think we need to encourage the residents to be more vigilant, because this thing is starting to get away from us again. 30 cases in the last 14 days is way too much, and I'm encouraged by the Board of Health. This board unanimously approved encouraging mandatory mask zones back in early August, and we started talking about it in early July. Board of Health hasn't seen fit to go that route. I do think it would make sense to again ask them if they would meet with us, since this board seems to have a different view than the Board of Health on that, and since the case rate has increased. The Pierce Middle School is closed for 2 weeks because of the 3 cases there. So I think it's incumbent upon us to start being a little bit more active on this again, because we don't want to fall behind. We don't want this to get ahead of us.
Thank you. Mr. Dennehy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just from a statistical perspective, Member Zulus is spot on. And for the first time in several weeks, our community is higher than the state average. So the state average over that same 14-day period is 7.3 per 100,000. Milton, as Mr. Zulus mentioned, is 7.5. So for the first time since I've been quantifying these statistics, Milton is higher than the state average. So to that point, I would reiterate what the statistics are telling us is that we all need to do a little more preventive maintenance when it comes to our social activity. We had one of our Milton youth hockey teams was actually shut down for 2 weeks as well. So you can imagine how frustrating it is for the families just getting back to school and trying to stay active with the kids. As a parent of 5, it was a bit disheartening 2 weeks into the season that we're going to lose the next 2 weeks of the season. So hopefully we can get things back under control. And I'm not trying to state any opinions or anything, but the statistics are leading towards what Mr. Zulus mentioned. So thank you.
Yes.
And I'll just add, I think the statistics show that we're going in the wrong direction, and we're going in the wrong direction fast. And so we need to try to do what we can to get people to take wearing masks and doing the things that they need to do more seriously than perhaps we've been doing over the last 6 to 8 weeks.
It's very likely we will be in the red by October 31st. It's only a 0.5% in 20 days. We could be at 8.5 by then, the way it's going.
I think for me, the difficulty is not understanding how the cases are being generated. And so then it's difficult. I guess a targeted approach could really help us decrease quickly and protect people, which is, I think, what we're all really talking about, is trying to help protect people. It's a little frustrating that really all we can do is ask people to be more careful and to exercise extra care when I just wish we had some more information. But I think that's what we need to do, is to just keep asking people to go back to some of their former habits and be extra vigilant. Yes, Mr. Doyle?
Madam Chair, and colleagues, on this note, I have had on several occasions over the past few days, people ask if the select board, if the town of Milton was going to issue a statement on Halloween practices.
Well, I'm not sure what we would do other than reiterate what the Board of Health has put out. I did speak with Chair Varela from the school committee about possibly doing some messaging to try to keep families really thinking about this and trying to come up with some alternative practices, because you can celebrate Halloween in a lot of different ways and you can make new family traditions. But that's not something that they're actually able to do. So I would be amenable to suggestions for a PSA or for some kind of campaign. That's what I thought, just to get it in front of people and get them thinking, and also to inspire people a little bit so they don't feel that they're alone, and just that we're not paying attention, that we do care and we want to see them be safe at the same time that they're marking holidays that are meaningful to them.
Um,
Oh.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah.
Yes,
So-
Mr. West.
So just back to what Michael said, I agree with Michael. I mean, it is hard to legislate a private event,
Mhm.
but to your point, to Michael's point, and Mike Denny and I talked about this today, the difference in this surge, if you want to call this surge, I guess you would, it's a surge in percentages, is that this isn't, if you look at where most of the cases are generating from, this isn't the nursing homes anymore, and it's not the seniors, it's schools. College, look how many school systems are shut down already because cases. And when we do talk about Halloween, it's young people who are going to be out there participating in it, not seniors and, well, whatever parents answer the doors. But that's Michael's concern, and his voice is, I think, is warranted. I mean, we just shot up like really quickly. School's only been back, 3 weeks, a month at most, for those that are back. So I don't know, maybe a PSA, whatever. I think whatever we could do to get the message out that people need to really pay attention about this, and even going back to Michael's point about the mandatory mask, and I take this as a faux pas myself. I walk in the Blue Hill, hike in the Blue Hills all the time where you rarely see anybody, so I don't really have a mask with me. And Sunday I walked Turner's Pond just to look at it. I did bring a mask with me, and I was shocked how many people from town residents were using it. But fortunately, they all had masks on. But there's a need for this. You know, we're moving higher than we realize. We could be back at phase 1 before we know it.
Yes, Mr.
Sorry, Michael. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, one option that we have is that we could support the Board of Health on this. We could say that we support the view of the Board of Health, and the Board of Health's view is to support the CDC guideline and recommend against it. It's not regulating it, it's not mandating it, but it's a recommendation. Seems to me that's one thing that we could do.
I'd make a motion that to just do that. I'd make that. If you want to put that in the floor. Yeah, I'll make that as a motion. It's an easy one to take.
And I think I had a second.
Yes.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Just so I'm clear, the motion is to put out a statement through the distribution list, the regular channels, supporting the Board of Health. Is that?
Yes.
Is that okay? Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes.
Madam Chair, further to Mr. Zulus's initial point, should we request a meeting with the Board of Health, either at our meeting or at their meeting, to have a follow-up discussion on the mandatory masks in light of all of the data that's been presented tonight?
I will certainly ask again We just got an email from them saying they had revisited it, and we're instead asking businesses to put up extra signage in their locations, especially I think it was Milton Village. So I'm happy to continue to extend that.
I think it might be good if we make it a request that the board would like to come in and meet with them. Thank you.
I'll extend that again. Okay. Who would like to draft the statement? I'm happy to do it unless someone else would like to.
Are we talking about just a brief statement attaching the guidelines that and stating that the Board of Health and the Select Board are recommending
Right.
adherence to the CDC guidelines, something along those lines? So it's just a couple of sentences attaching the guidelines?
That was my understanding.
Okay.
I can put together. I'm happy to do that.
Sure.
Okay, great. Just, I always like to know who's going to do something. Okay, thank you. And we're deferring Chief Madden's quarterly update. The next item, in light of the time of year that we're in, I just thought it a proper moment to remember in the history of Indigenous people, which continues to this day, but who live on the land that we now call Milton, the town that we all live in. And I spoke with Steve O'Donnell, who's the chair of our historical society, and he encouraged me to read an article by a Milton resident, Mr. William P. Fall, who noted that the last Ponkapog Indigenous person who lived in Milton died in, I believe, 1893, and her name was Mary Emmeline Chappell. But she was the daughter of Daniel Crowd, and there are crowds still in the area, but not in Milton anymore. And Betsy Diggins, who was an African-American woman. Their home actually still stands at 970 Canton Avenue, beautiful home. And we all know about the history of Indigenous people dying from introduced disease and policies and practices that were meant to control the land, control them and reduce their numbers. And that as a country, we have far to go in meeting obligations that have been promised by the federal government. But I don't know that we often think about our own history here with Indigenous people. And so I would encourage everyone to have a conversation, to look up the history of Milton. It's present in the place names, the natural features, and the homes, the very homes we live in, as demonstrated by this family, of all those who are long gone, and people who still live among us who we haven't gotten to know. So I would encourage people to take in this history, to reflect deeply on it, and to learn more about the history from the point of view of Indigenous people. So, and I thank the board for its indulgence, and I would welcome any comments, not that anyone has to comment or ask questions.
Well done, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yes, nicely done, Madam Chair.
Points are well taken, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Okay, now item 8, reopening of the December special town meeting warrant. And we are doing this in order to consider accepting an article that's recently come to our attention. So I'll entertain a motion to reopen the warrant.
I'll move to reopen the warrant for the December 7th special town meeting.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus.
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. So moving on to 9, we have recently received, and hopefully the board received the article, an article to amend the zoning bylaws, section 3, subsection Q, known as the Great Estates bylaw. And actually, I do see that Ned Corcoran is with us, and so I'll just sum up briefly, and then if members have questions, perhaps Mr. Corcoran could join us to answer them. My understanding is that there currently is no allowance for people who are not 55 and over. This is an age-restricted community, Walcott Woods, and it's 55 and over. It's part of the age restriction. However, it's come up that there is no ability for someone to live there with someone who is 55 or over if, say, they're a domestic partner or a college-aged child coming home for a vacation or a caregiver. And so this article not only allows for that, but also it defines the period of time that somebody who is non-age qualified, who is not 55 or over, to remain in the unit. If, say, it's an older person who then needs to move to a congregate care facility or something like that, or if there's a death, and then that person can remain for 2 years. And I just wanted to note that it begins in section A saying 10% of all units of the Great Estate PUD may be rented at any one time. I did go back in the original zoning or the original amendment to the Great Estates PUD for Walcott Woods, and that was already in place. So that doesn't appear to be a change. Does the board have any questions or comments? If not, I do want to note this is slightly irregular because the planning board has begun discussion on this, but they're taking up the article tomorrow. And if we decided that we wanted to approve this for the warrant so that we could accommodate the production schedule for the warrant, we would be accepting it, but only upon the acceptance by the planning board without any material changes. So if it arrives in this form and there aren't material changes, then our vote would be valid. Otherwise, we would have to revisit it. So, and I had checked with April Anderson, and she said she didn't see any reason why we couldn't do that, even though she couldn't promise that the planning board would accept it. I did have a conversation with our planning director, Tim Zerwinski, and he had talked with Mr. Corcoran as this was being drafted, and felt that it would largely be in order. So, yes, Mr. Doyle?
Madam Chair, I endorse this as a best practice, and I will therefore move to include the article to amend the zoning bylaws, section 3, subsection Q, parenthesis, Great Estates bylaws, close parenthesis, subject to the planning board accepting the article without material alteration.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes?
Oh, Mr. Zulis? Yes. Do you have something you wish to say or add?
May we hear from Mr. Corcoran before we vote? Does he have something to add on this, or?
Absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry. Now I see your hand is raised. Yes, Mr. Corcoran, you've been promoted. Thank you for joining us.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm observing on my phone, so I hadn't fully loaded into the Zoom process. Thank you for your vote, or your apparent vote. This is an issue that popped recently with the potential sale of a unit at Walcott Woods, where an attorney, and God bless us attorneys, suggested to the buyer that her college-age child come home with her for the summer. The bylaw, as it was originally drafted, simply says that it's restricted to person's age, occupancy restricted age, person's age 55 and over, period. And the bylaw that has been presented to you is a bylaw that substantially the same that we approved in the town of Belmont for a separate project being undertaken by Northland, by my client, Northland Residential. And it's consistent with other provisions in Belmont and in municipalities. I've spoken particularly with Kathleen O'Donnell, a member of the planning board, who is familiar with this bylaw language in other jurisdictions in which she has worked. So I understood the end of the bylaw when it was drafted is that the bylaw, the occupancy would be primarily restricted to persons. First of all, the primary occupant must be 55 or over, but it does allow for, we did think that we allow opportunities for adult children, children with grandchildren who could come and visit, and those types of occupancy. So appreciate the quick work that this board and the planning board has committed to advance this article, hopefully to advance the article to consideration for town meeting. There will be a public hearing to be conducted on the recommendation or on the proposed bylaw by the planning board sometime later, over early November. Obviously, that would have to be noticed, but there would be obviously opportunity for public comment at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Corcoran. Does anyone have follow-up questions? I suggest we actually just take the vote again, if that's all right. Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
And yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Corcoran, for joining us.
Thank you all very much. Have a good evening.
Good night. So I will entertain a motion to close the warrant.
I'll move that we close the warrant for the December 7th special town meeting.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
And yes, thank you. 11, discussion of town meeting articles. I don't believe there's anything to discuss on Article 1, amend departmental appropriations for fiscal year 2021, or Article 2, stabilization fund authorization. But Article 3, fire station construction and equipment appropriation. This is becomes slightly complicated, or maybe it's just that there are a lot of steps that are seeming to come together at once. So the RFP process for the East Milton Station closes on October 14th. The Fire Station Building Committee plans to have a meeting on the following night, October 15th, in order to make its final recommendation for a site for the East Milton Station. So the article that we now have talks about headquarters and one substation. If they decide that they would like to add East Milton Square because they feel that they have things sewn up enough to present to our board for our consideration location, then they would need to amend that article to say 2 substations, and depending upon whether the parcel is one that is town owned, that's one process. But if it's owned by someone else and it's a purchase or a lease, then there's also an article for that as well. And then on top of that, we would need to work out any bonding, anything like that. So The warrant committee would be meeting on the 19th. And I need to speak with the chair of the warrant committee, George Asher, to see if we can work on timing a little bit, because this board would need time to have the fire station building committee come in, address us, really understand what they're proposing. And we would need bond counsel and also our, Unibank, our financial advisor. We need the treasurer, the town accountant, town council. We would need that group with the fire station building committee exec team to really, and Mr. Dennehy, to really work on this and get all of those financing ducks in a row, so to speak. So I'm trying to work with Dan Clark and also council and Mr. Dennehy and all these people to figure out what kind of timing we could really handle. Because the warrant, originally it was supposed to be to the printer on the 21st. And I don't think there's any way we could do that. We need to work on the budget articles anyway. And we need budget articles. So that's a bit difficult. And as Mr. Clark said to me the other day, it would have been much better to be able to do this in January or February. So they're threading a needle, one of the phrases that he used, trying to get this to work, because they would really like it to go on the ballot in April. So I'm opening this up now that I've given you some background. I'm opening this up for discussion to hear what people's thoughts are.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Wells.
can I just add, as the rep to that committee, and Mr. Clark and I speak almost daily now, I also want to thank Amy. Has done a lot of work on this as well. Amy Dexter, our town accountant. You are correct in that it would have been better if the town meeting were in January or February, but it isn't. Here's where we're at. The RFP does close on the 14th. And the other thing is that given the special amendment, the Hurley Amendment, which would be used to fund this, I believe that when the committee comes in, if this all does work out and does present to you as this is looking now, I think all of us will be very happy with what they're going to present to us.
So yes, Ms. Conlon.
Madam Chair, just a couple of thoughts. And one is, I have to, and I'm sorry if there's a lot of noise. DPW is right out on the street cutting down a tree. So there's a lot of background noise here. I apologize for that. I'm threading a needle here because I am recused on the bonding aspect of this, in related aspects of this project, but not on the location of the fire station. I have an ethics opinion from the ethics committee on that. So I tuned into the warrant committee meeting and heard that there were RFPs, an RFP had gone out and bids were being opened. I wasn't aware that that process was going on. So let me just suggest, if December is really too premature, given all of the moving pieces that committee is dealing with, we should at least keep in mind that there's nothing prohibiting us from having a January special town meeting for that article. And perhaps, in talking with a planning board member, I threw out the idea that even if we have a December town meeting because it's budget driven, and now there's a planning board article for December, we could still have a January or February special town meeting if there's something that the planning board feels is important and is not yet ready to go to town meeting in December. So I think there may be other boards that we could consult with, but if the fire building committee really needs a little more time here, given the schedule, I think we should think about that, letting them go January or February. It wouldn't be the first year we've had a couple of special town meetings as well as the annual. And there is a necessity, I believe, based on last Friday's finance committee meeting, especially as it relates to the school department, for us to go forward with the December town meeting for the first two articles. And I know we're going to get to the finance report after this, but I'll just put that out there. If we're going to get into a discussion about bonding, I'm going to recuse myself, but I wanted to put that idea forward.
Right,
Can I ask a question to Katie first, though, Madam Chair? Do you think the town moderator would go along with that, Katie?
Yes.
I think we have to ask.
Okay.
But I agree with Mike Zulus. I think it's up to us to call the meeting. Obviously,
Okay, all right,
declare
okay,
that
okay.
his availability, we need to get the town clerk and the moderator and the warrant committee, everyone's declare the date, but I think it's up to us to call the meeting, and I'm sure he would be.
Yes,
I think they would, I think Mr. Clark and Mr. Walsh would appreciate that. I think that would make it a little bit more breathing room on this. I really do.
for all of us. And for town meeting, maybe understanding this.
Yeah.
Mr. Zulus?
Yeah, two things. One, we don't want to rush a 25 or more $1 million project. We don't want to just throw it together because we have to have a December town meeting. If we'll be in a better position in January and February, my view is let's do it. Two, I'd be very interested to see cash flows and financing options for different options here, whether we, start with one, start with two, start with three. What are the different models for that? Because I think, given our financial situation, we need to do this. We need to do these fire stations, but we need to do it in a prudent way, and we need to make sure we have, perhaps have some options to choose from. So I'm well in favor of giving the fire building committee the time they need to get this done. And also, I'd like to see some different options for proceeding.
Well, without saying too much, I think they're on the same page with that. So, okay. So I think what I'm hearing is that's really the option we want to go with. We don't necessarily want to wait and see if we can get to a point where we're comfortable enough. It sounds as if we would like to go forward with the warrant we have minus fire station articles, and then offer them a town meeting in January or possibly February. I don't know, depending upon timing. Is that my understanding, Ms. Conlon?
Madam Chair, yes, and if you're having a conversation with Brian Walsh or Dan Clark of the Fire Building Committee, you might suggest to them that they could always, this would be within the moderator's discretion, but they could always try to do a presentation at the December meeting to introduce some of what they're going to be bringing forward at a winter town meeting. And there may be other boards and committees that might want to make a presentation at the December meeting, since it will be a short warrant at this point, if Article 3 should come out.
All right. Okay. Well, based on what our representative there said, that they would appreciate it, but I'll check with them, and Mr. Dennehy and I can also check in with our moderator and our clerk, and we'll see.
Why don't you do that, Madam Chair, and I'll reach out to the committee tonight as soon as we're done,
Okay.
if that's okay with you.
Okay.
Yeah, and can I just make another suggestion? I think you should look at no later than early February, but probably you don't want it, probably not right at the beginning of January, probably late January, early February. I think that's the time frame that we've done in the past. It would be a good target.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. Perfect.
Maybe we'll be able to do it in person by then.
Maybe.
Maybe my father-in-law would be delighted. Yeah, I got a picture of Falmouth's town meeting from him. Okay, so item number 12. That's our final. Oh yes, Mr. Dennehy. Oh, you're still muted.
Sorry, Madam Chair, our fire chief is here, if we could,
Oh,
Mr. Madden tonight, so, yeah.
wonderful. Yes, we would be delighted to hear from him. Welcome, Chief.
Voting, and it's going to reload into the meeting.
Oh,
Hello.
there you are.
How are you?
Well, how are you?
Sorry for the delay. The storm really did a lot of damage in town. We're still running around. I think we had 22 trees into houses at my last current count. So we were running around chasing all that stuff. Extremely busy. So I appreciate you guys taking me this late. This is my first one, so I apologize. But I'd like to thank Mike and Mike Dennehy and the select board and Paige for giving me the opportunity to be the fire chief. It's my first time being introduced to you guys. Chief Grant was great. He's a hard act to follow. He's really, really good. He helped me out a lot with the transfer. Been a busy quarter. I think just going over the runs that we've had after the COVID, really big impact. We've had 1,100 runs since July 1st, 1,175 runs. We had 35 calls for fires, including 2 second alarm fires, 2 working fires, 1 mutual aid to the city of Quincy. I think we had 16 suspected COVID cases. So we're still busy with that. We're treating every patient as COVID possible. So we're taking all of the precautions with that. We had 600 unknown patients that we're not sure if they had COVID or not, but we treated them as if they had COVID, just to make sure that we protect ourselves, protecting our members, and protecting the general public. You know, anybody that we see, that's how we treat everybody. It's been a real busy quarter for me. Trying to catch up on everything. It's different when you go from one side to the other. When you're from a union member to, immediately thrown into negotiations with Mike and Paige and Local 1116. Great learning experience. Couple of projects that we have, we need new firehouse software. So been investigating that, speaking to a lot of fire chiefs around, working with John King and Billy West from the police department to try and match up our stuff. Working with the Firehouse Building Committee, getting caught up to speed with those guys. Extremely, a lot of talented people on that group. Teaching me a lot of stuff on, buildings and stuff like that. Working with the fire prevention officer, several 40B projects going on or soon to be. Working with Lieutenant Vitaliano just to get caught up in the planning. Tim Swerinsky, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. Working with him to try and make sure we're all on the same page as far as any kind of that new buildings that are going up. We've had 2 retirements, Chief Grant and Firefighter Ellis, both with 34 years of service, I believe. We had Firefighter Feeney, graduated from the Mass Fire Academy. And then we have 3 currently, Firefighter Garrity, Joyce, and Boyle are all currently in the Mass Fire Academy. Now they're halfway through. So once they graduate in early November, we'll see a little bit of our staffing go up.
Well, thank you very much. You have been extremely busy. Do any members have questions or comments? Mr. Zulus?
So Chief, by all accounts, from what I understand, you're doing a great job. That's one comment. And then the other comment is Mike Kerr, the old voice of Celtic Air, sends his best.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, Mr. Doyle?
I just want to piggyback on what Mike said. I had a hour-long meeting with the Milton Interfaith Clergy Association today, and one of the things that several members expressed was their deep appreciation for the work of our police and fire departments in particular. So I pass that along to you, Chief.
Thank you very much. It's really important to have the people back you, to understand what we do and how we do things. And as long as the citizens are happy and the people are happy around us, then we seem to be doing our job right. And I think, it's pretty easy here. The men and women of the Milton Fire Department are phenomenal. They've had my back since I first started interviewing for the place, the position. So it's been great, and the people are wonderful. So thank you very much.
Madam Chair,
Oh, yes, Mr. Wells?
go home, Chief. You might have a trail on fire at 3 a.m. tonight. Go home, put your feet up while you can. Happened to Cambridge last night.
Oh, and I just want to recognize Ms. Conlon.
Chief, just thank you to you and all of the crews that are out tonight. I'm sure responding to an awful lot of emergencies. I don't know if there's anyone right outside my door here with the DPW and cutting down a tree, but thank you for all that your team is doing. We appreciate it all. And since this is your first televised meeting with us, once again, welcome aboard.
Thank you. I hope I covered everything that needed to be covered. If you have anything else, any advice going forward, please let me know.
Thank you very much. And I just have to echo everyone's sentiments. We feel really fortunate to have you and all of our Milton firefighters, and looking forward to new people joining.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dennehy, for alerting me. Now we're on to 12, our Finance Committee report for FY21 and the FY22 budget. Ms. Conlon.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, because we're still working on these matters and we have a meeting this Friday morning, but the Finance Committee met last Friday morning with the school finance subcommittee and the new interim superintendent and assistant superintendent Pavlicek, as well as of course the town administrator, and at that time it was Melinda Collins and myself, but I know we have an appointment to make a change on the finance committee a little bit later in the agenda. So we discussed both the FY21 budget and the FY22 budget, and the school department has identified certain needs that they have. There's so much uncertainty still at the state until the state passes a budget that while everyone's belief is that Chapter 70 and unrestricted general government aid will remain at the levels that the legislature agreed upon several weeks ago, which is an increase for us. We were very conservative in the spring when we did our budget, so we had projected a decrease in those accounts. And the happy news is that because we were so conservative in budgeting, in the legislature has approved amounts for both of those accounts that are about $1 million in excess of what we had budgeted for. We also have some additional new growth that came in at a higher level than what we had budgeted for. So there is some additional revenue sources that we could appropriate at the December special town meeting. We want to be cautious of the fact that still means it doesn't preclude additional 9C cuts during the year in other accounts. And the school department identified the circuit breaker as one that they're not sure how that's going to come out. And, in a worst case scenario, it could be several $100,000 difference. So there's still so much uncertainty, but the school department did identify some additional teaching needs that they have. On our side, the town administrator has identified the fire department budget having some needs, mainly in the area of overtime due to some personnel that are out. And there's some other departments, perhaps the library, that I know the town administrator is talking with other departments. So we're going to be meeting again on Friday, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more information to move forward at that time or at a subsequent meeting, and then to make a recommendation to the board and the school committee and the warrant committee. So that's about all that we can really report, I think, on FY21. For FY22, we're at the very beginning stage of preparing that budget, and the town administrator had recommended that we take an approach this year where we request only one budget rather than two budgets from departments, that we request a budget that would be level dollar plus contractual increases. So essentially holding the number, bringing the 21 numbers forward, but adjusting for whether it's a salary increase that was negotiated through collective bargaining, or maybe an increase through a particular equipment vendor, or something that has a higher amount for the subsequent year. Those costs would be added, but otherwise we would budget for level dollar. So we had a discussion about that. The Finance Committee had voted to recommend that for this board's support. We did notify the school department about that at the meeting last Friday. They pointed out to us that they've had a lot of increased enrollment, so that perhaps might be a challenge for the school department, but they're aware of it, and we had some discussion around that. So I think that's pretty much what we can report at this time. Both Melinda Collins and I, as the as the Finance Committee supported Mr. Dennehy's suggestion for the FY22 budget and wanted to recommend putting that forward. And we didn't take a vote on any potential operating override, but our feeling was that this next year is probably, or next spring is probably not a year for FY22 to go out for an operating override. That was the sense that we had at this point.
Thank you.
And so Melinda or Mike, if you may have other, if I forgot anything, please feel free to add to it.
No, I don't think you really forgot anything. I know one of the complications for in addition to more teachers, part of the need is to offset the need for substitute teachers, because they're very difficult to get at this time, and people may not realize that it's become more difficult, and they need to double up having children both in the building and out of the building and simultaneous teaching, and then people needing to be out and quarantined. Mr. Dennehy?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Wells.
So just to follow up to Katie's point, and to Mr. Dennehy's suggestion, having lived through this exercise as a department head many times, I think the level dollar approach is a smart way to go, especially when, as Katie just mentioned, the possibility of an override is just not even in the reality, given this. But it is a way, particularly for the department heads, the earlier they know this is how they're going to have to live in 22, the better off they'll be able to prepare and plan for it individually. So I think that's a prudent move. It's worked for us many times in the past, and I think it'll help get us through this difficult time that we're going through financially in the world.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Mr. Dennehy, would you like to?
No, I'd like to thank both members of the Finance Committee. Very, very productive work. Very similar for those that are watching tonight to what we went through in the past two prior to the annual town meetings when we're putting the budgets together, where both groups sat at the table. At some point in time, we're going to try to identify priorities on both sides. And just to qualify some of the stuff that the Vice Chair said so well, like when you live in a COVID world and the library is not collecting late fees, you suffer some revenue shortages. So that's something that needs to be looked at. The fire department has been working with 7 firefighters out injured, and there's some overtime that's related to that. So we're working through all that in a COVID world. But I think it's a very, very productive discussion. And I agree, we hope to have some more substantial numbers for everyone as we work through it. And I just want to thank everyone at town meeting and the warrant committee and this board, obviously, for the conservative approach in the spring. And hopefully that bears some fruit for us as we work through the tough times ahead, certainly ahead. So thank you both.
Do any members have questions or comments? Members? Okay, thank you. All right. So item 13, we had on, because last night we had for our alternative flight paths meeting, and I actually spoke with Rep. Driscoll today, and he said that he did get a response to the technical comments that he submitted. Mr. Zulus and Mr. Doherty worked on getting those together, and to Rep. Driscoll and Senator Timilty, and who also got Congressman Lynch to sign on. And the response was that they're going to address those technical questions at the upcoming 2 workshops. So, so we can look forward to paying very close attention to make sure they actually do address them. Mr. Zulus, do you wish to say something? I think you're muted.
Yeah, we may want to take a look at that. I don't know if that's adequate, but we can take a look at it. I think the idea is we wanted to have that response before the workshops, but we can take a look and see if we can work with that. We may be in a position, we may want to press for
Early.
getting it earlier, but I guess we can take a look at it.
Right. That was my, that's what I thought we were supposed to be getting. We were supposed to be having those cleared up earlier in order to have that information to participate with. And yeah. Okay, good. Thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to say anything or ask a question? Okay, thank you. Let's see. Item 14, restaurant proposal for 88 Wharf Street from the 88 Wharf Street Hospitality LLC. And I'm thought that we were going to have Mr. O'Donnell and, oh, I see someone who looks as if they are representing the applicants. Who's just been promoted. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you? Thank you for being so patient. I know you've been waiting for a little while. This is a discussion related to an application for a common vittler's license for the location at 80 Wharf Street. And I believe you have a presentation to introduce the concept for a new restaurant there. Thank you, Hillary. So we'd be happy to hear from you.
I'd like to start with Madam Chair and members of the board by thanking you for taking the time to let us present. My name is Harry Dominguez, and this is...
I'm Teodora Bakarjieva, and we're partners with Brian on this venture.
Unfortunately, Brian couldn't attend today, so we're here. He's dealt with a lot of the initial paperwork. Hopefully I could answer any questions. So Madre is, in a way, a labor of love for us. It's an homage to our mothers and grandmothers, to all mothers and grandmothers, for that nourishment they used to give us with their home cooking. It is Italian, focused on the Tuscan area. If you want to switch over.
If you want to move to the next slide.
Oh, there you go. We had the good fortune of going to Italy a few years back, and we actually were in that area in Tuscany, and we fell in love with the people, the small village homes, the villas, the restaurants, their decor, their food. So we thought it'd be great to bring something that we could hopefully get close to here in Milton. Oh, well, food. We fell in love with porchetta, which is pork. My first experience trying that was actually in one of the farmers market. Simply served in a paper bag. It was a delicious sandwich, and so all the food was made very, Tuscan food is its idea of it is cucina povera, which is poor cooking. So it's very simple, but made with very fresh local ingredients, and that's that shine, as opposed to building these, like chefs. A lot of chefs like to do, building these dishes. It just lets the ingredients shine.
This just speaks a little bit about the bread with no salt. It's just like a typical Tuscany thing that you get always bread with your food. Who doesn't like bread? So our idea is just to serve simple food and create a place that's really comfortable for the neighborhood, and where people can feel comfortable, almost like at home. If you're in somebody's home and you get this kind of home cooking, it's not pretentious. It's just delicious and simple and inviting.
Here you'll see some of the dishes. Obviously, it's a conceptual menu. As you know, I'm not sure if you know, but most of the times, the conceptual menus change as you get closer to opening. Chefs, have their ideas as well. So this
is just an example of, typical food served in Tuscany with, the steak fiorentina or the panzanella salad and things like that.
It will be focused. The focus will be around that region, but it'll be all rustic, a lot of rustic Italian food.
Yeah, our beverage program would be heavily focused on Italian wines, also featuring some Amaros and Vermouth and spritzes and, just different products from Italy all over, with a great cocktail list and just a diversity of different Italian wines. This is the proposed.
This is the initial floor plan proposed. This was, a visual and design. We have a more accurate plan on the works now. Tanya Nayak, I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a local based designer, but she's also been in HGTV, and she lives in the building. She's Brian O'Donnell's wife.
Yes.
So she is doing the design. It's a collaboration.
And the picture underneath is the actual patio, just overlooking the water.
And these are inspirations of what we aim to have
the restaurant to look like.
Correct.
Yeah.
Convivial, warm, just like the Tuscan people.
Rustic. This is just a small bio on us. We're actually partners in business and life. We've done a few restaurants together. And we're looking forward to creating something in the neighborhood. We live really close by, a few miles away from the restaurant. And we always wanted to have something local. And we see the development of different restaurants in the area. Obviously, it's gotten a lot richer in the last few years. But we'd like to bring some European flair as well.
We're actually, one of my first, which was Barlola, we were partners with. Brian O'Donnell was one of my partners in there years ago.
Many years ago.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we have.
If you have any questions for us.
We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Sounds like a lovely partnership. We're not ready to actually vote. I think you were prepared for that on the common Vittler's license. It's really discussion this evening. We are possibly looking at taking a vote on the common Vittler's license and then at the same meeting having a hearing on the liquor license, but we're trying to work out dates and things. But I'm going to open it up now at the moment for questions and comments from members. I think everyone's received the application, and Jen McCullough sent us quite a bit of backup information on previous conditions for the previous Vittler's license at that location. Does anyone have questions, comments?
I have a comment, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Wells.
So first off, I just want to thank the team. Thank you all for bringing back to life a location which was our first location for a restaurant of this type in Milton. It was 88 Wharf was the first one to open. I've been, as my colleagues know, I've been traveling to this area since I could walk. My grandparents only lived a block away from, on the Dorchester side from the Wharf area. You are graced with a $1 million view from your patio, and from the looks of what you've done, and from my knowledge of your other restaurants, many of them I've been to, this is something that I hope that we can use, and I'm sure the residents of 88 Wharf will be very happy to see this back, because they've been very sad since it's been closed. So, and just finally, my point is that just the fact that you're even considering opening a restaurant in the midst of this COVID crisis, when so many are closing, has to be a courageous thing for each of you. And many people probably wouldn't associate courage with a restaurant business, but I get it. And I thank you for trying and wanting to bring something like this to our community, to this location. So I'm all in. I'm ready to vote. Whenever we get to vote, I'm ready to vote. So thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence.
We appreciate your sentiments.
Ms. Conlon?
So Mr. Dominguez and Ms. Is it Bakarjiva?
Yes. Correct.
Yes,
Close enough.
So this is very exciting, and I like your concept. I like your plans. I know it's a preliminary menu, but it looks like it's going to be a very interesting and hopefully have a lot of appeal in town. And I think the town is looking forward to something moving into 88 Wharf. It's, as you know, it's been closed for a little while. It's a wonderful location, a beautiful spot, and so I agree with Richard that to open a restaurant in the middle of all the trying circumstances that we're facing in 2020 is not common. So so thank you for your interest in Milton and in this particular site, and putting forward a very creative and interesting and appealing and exciting proposal. So I just wanted to say that. I know we have a few next steps. We probably need to share some draft conditions for a common vic license with you and with Mr. O'Donnell, and then probably entertain anyway some public input where this is a transfer of a license and there's been a restaurant there. There may be less public comment than there is in some of the other licenses hearings in the past, especially when this first started with another restaurant. But thank you for coming in tonight, sharing your thoughts. This is a really exciting plan, and I'm happy to hear your presentation tonight. Thank you.
For us as well.
Mr. Zulus?
So I am likewise very enthusiastic and salivating. And I'll ask you if there's any chance of getting any wild boar dishes.
Oh yes, wild boar and pappardelle.
Oh,
Yes,
excellent.
we'll do the menu.
Yes.
All
That's
right.
one thing I always, anytime I see it in a menu, I'm a wild boar aficionado.
And it's, there's not much of it around here, at least that I've been able to find. So that's great. Thank you. I'm very enthusiastic.
Thank you.
Mr. Doyle, would you like to say anything?
Only that I echo the comments and can't wait to bring my wife to a sumptuous dinner.
And we can't wait to have you and host you.
Thank you.
Oh.
Well, yes.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you for your patience. And we will be in touch about the conditions and see what we can get ironed out before the meeting.
Great, thank you, Chair. And it was our pleasure, and have a great evening.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay. Arthur. We are on the Conservation Commission sign proposal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Conservation Commission brings before the Select Board its request for your consideration of a signage program that they have unanimously adopted. They've been working on it for several years based upon needs found on site walks and in regular monthly meetings, with increasing instances of encroachment as cited in the background document on the town's conservation holdings, destruction of trees and other growth on the properties, infringements on habitats as noted, and even the dumping of large household appliances. Noting what other communities have done, attending workshops on this, the Conservation Commission passed a motion, which I'll read to you, that the Milton Conservation Commission adopt a conservation land signage program consistent with the best practices for conservation signage of the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions, as found in section 9.7.2 of the 10th edition of the association's handbook. The sign size and design are in the materials that were prepared for you. The lands are identified and mappings of most of them, except for the 4 that were recently gifted to the Conservation Commission are included. And with that brief recapping of the introductory information, I would entertain any questions that anybody has and hope that the board would endorse the recommendation of the commission.
Well, Hillary, would you by any chance have a sign to pull up so that people could see what we're speaking about? Should have asked you that earlier. But does anyone have any questions or comments, or shall we?
I'll make a motion to approve, Madam Chair, unless the board wants to look at the sign. I didn't hear what Hillary said, whether she had a
I
picture or not.
I don't think she has it.
I'll second the motion. I like the design of the sign. It looks
All right,
terrific.
so based on Katie's surveillance, I'll move that motion. So
Or I seconded, so.
Here we are.
Oh, there we are.
There. And then in the lower part where the wetland, there we are. There's the second one. Thank you so much, Katie. I appreciate that. I think residents will really appreciate seeing.
I think you meant Hillary. Thank you, Hillary.
Sorry, Hillary. Yes, I think residents will really appreciate having these lands pointed out to them, and to see really how much we do have conserved, and that we are paying attention and caring for these lands. Thank you so much. So I think we had a second.
Yes.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes, I think the signs are terrific.
Ms. Collins, yes. And Mr. Doyle, please, thank you, and please extend our thanks to the Conservation Commission, not only for this, but for all of their work protecting our wetlands.
It'd be a pleasure to pass that along, Madam Chair. May I beg one moment for a related question? As you saw, there were 2 iterations of the design. Some of the lands are not with identification. Others are like the Pope's Pond area. Would you want the commission to bring back to you the design whenever an individual property is identified by name? There are a couple that have been gifted to the town. There's some Lamb properties, so there would be a gift of the Lamb family or the gift of a certain Lamb member, as an example. Or does the design with the 2 configurations meet your generic approval, and the Conservation Commission would work accordingly?
Well, I mean, I'm certain that the board would be happy to see those, and we usually involved in those gifts. So I'm sure that we welcome that, and here's to more gifts in the future. Protect our wetlands and other natural resources. So thank you for the offer. Okay.
Thank you.
Now moving on to item 16, discussion approval of the Traffic Mitigation East Milton Working Group. And Mr. Zulus, if you would lead us through this, please.
Yes, we went back to the drawing board with the comments from Arthur and from Katie. Arthur's comment was to have someone from Precinct 6 and Precinct 7. And so, Arthur, the change that we made, the chair will likely be from Precinct 7, Dick Burke from the Traffic Mitigation Committee. So, pardon me. So we set out that the two resident members, we said at least one of them would be a member of the East Milton Neighbors Association, could be two, and at least one would be a member of Precinct 6. So we'll have Precinct 6 and Precinct 7 covered, and we do have the possibility, while recognizing the importance of East Milton, and we're going to have Dick Burke from East Milton, and we'll have at least one other person from East Milton. This leaves open the possibility of having a resident who's not from East Milton, because the area also has an effect on other residents of the town as well. So that was the effort there. And then Katie and I had some discussions about whether we wanted to overburden our police chief and our town administrator with having another committee. And so what we came up with was, because of the importance of having a police officer meeting with the residents and meeting with the business representatives on this, we decided that it made sense to make the chief or his or her designee or his designee an ex officio non-voting member. So they'll be available to the committee. They can give their expertise, but they don't necessarily need to be there to vote on matters, and they won't vote on matters. So we have 5 people who are voting, so it's not a tie. So that's the effort that went into making those changes from our last meeting.
Thank you. I think I'd like to ask Ms. Conlon and Mr. Doyle first if they would want to make comments that the changes are addressing concerns you brought up.
I'm fine with the revised draft, Madam Chair.
I am as well, and would move the adoption of the proposal.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Wells.
So obviously I'm out of this now. I had very strong comments at the last meeting that I felt that the chief's designee should be a member, as he is a member of the Traffic Commission, as he was a voting member of the Traffic Mitigation Committee, and as the fact that enforcement will come up very strongly in this, as it does in anything in East Milton. I think we probably all know, Mr. Zulus surely knows that who the chief's designee is for these matters. It's I don't want to speak for him, but I'd be 99% sure that's who he would assign to this, as that is his expert on traffic. I just don't think it's right that he's an ex officio. They're a voting member in every other aspect of traffic in this town. I don't think he needs to be an ex officio. So I'm going to stick to my comments that I was at with your initial proposal, which is that the chief's designee is a member of this committee.
So Richard, I may have missed that, and I apologize. I'm certainly not wedded to it. It was, an attempt to reach a compromise. So I certainly, I'm not wedded to it myself. So I, open it up to the other members to see what they have to say about it.
Having moved the motion, I accept that as a friendly amendment, if that's what you intend, Richard.
I accept, that's what I said. I accept all the rest of it, except I stick to what Mr. Zulus initially proposed, with the exception of the amendments that you've worked out as regarding to other membership and how they come from. And I feel very strongly, especially having not only living in East Milton and being there every day as you are, Arthur, but just understanding how important it is for that designee, and who is a very well-versed designee, who I'm pretty sure who it would be, being a voting member, not ex officio.
Madam Chair, I can live with that. My concern is that going forward, I think this board needs to keep in mind that employees are usually not members of committees. I know we've had a few recent examples in recent times. I subscribe to the view that employees should work with the committees and testify to committees and be there to assist committees and kind of be the staff for committees. But being on a lot of committees, I look at the town planning director, who's on several of them, the town administrator's on a few, the Lieutenant Alba's on a few of them. So I think it's a lot to ask of the employees to be members of committees and have to be at every meeting. My intent was that they would be available to the committee, and certainly their expertise is needed by the committee. I'm willing to go along with making it a voting member. I hope the board's going to be mindful of this going forward, that we've got, number one, a lot of committees, and number two, employees taking on greater roles, and frankly, a lot of the same people serving on multiple committees. And I think we need to revisit those issues going forward. But does this not now leave the committee with 6 voting members, which, normally you prefer an odd number of voting members? I don't have the proposal right in front of me. I'm trying to find the email, but I think that leaves us with 6 voting members. And I wonder whether we should make it a 7-member committee, which it was before, and just appoint another resident to it.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. If Mr. Zulus is fine with that, I'll propose that.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. So the changes will be, the first change for Richard, the last line where it says one of whom is the chief of police or his or her designee, period. We're not going to say ex officio or non-voting. We'll just say period. And then in Romanet 2, we'll say 3 of whom shall be residents of the town of Milton. I wonder if we want to say, if the 3 of whom shall be residents of the town of Milton, I wonder if we want to say of the 3, 2 shall be members of the EMNA and at least 1 from precinct 6 and 1 from precinct 7. We want to do that.
That would give you a general member. Anyone from town could also then be like the at-large member that meets fulfills your need.
That's what I was thinking. Do we want to go that? Or do we want to just leave it more open and just say 1?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Repeat the proposal?
Right, so 3 of whom
shall be residents of the town of Milton with at least, and we could say 2 being members of the East Milton Neighborhood Association and at least 1 residing in precinct 6 and 1 residing in precinct 7.
Okay, and 1 and 7.
Can I ask a question about the East Milton Neighborhood Association? I mean, I know they have an executive board that's very active, and then I think they have a much wider membership, but I don't really know how wide that membership is. Maybe Arthur or Richard has a better sense. Is that enough of a pool to draw from?
It's several hundred. Am I correct, Arthur? There's quite a big list. I mean, it's only $10 to join each year. It's a pretty big pool.
Right, and if you had difficulty filling it, then we could, I guess, look at amending it.
I don't think you will, Madam Chair. I don't think you'll have any difficulty at all.
It's an active group there, which is lovely. So one thing I will say, maybe when we're, well, first of all, this is not a permanent committee, so we can keep that in mind, but cognizant of what Ms. Conlon is saying, maybe when we're proposing committees in the future, even a short term, which given the amount of committees we have, we should, I think, really think about when we're proposing committees and what they're for and timing and whatnot. But maybe we can check with staff and really talk about this and have a conversation with Mr. Dennehy too about the impact and also what difference it would makes for the particular concern, whether the person be voting or non-voting. So just things to think about as we move forward. Yes, Ms. Conlon.
Could I just come back to the East Milton Neighborhood Association issue just for a follow-up on that? I wouldn't want somebody who lives in East Milton but is not a dues-paying member of the East Milton Neighborhood Association to be excluded from consideration. So, neighborhood associations are important, but I'm not sure that's the right criteria. It sounds like it's a few hundred people, so there's probably some qualified candidates. I just wouldn't want to exclude somebody, I guess, where there's a third seat. That might give a little leeway there, but that's something we should probably keep in mind going forward.
Well, could they have a designee? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Doyle?
I think that's taken care of. Katie's got a great point, but Roman numeral 2 would read, 3 of whom shall be residents of the town of Milton, with at least 1 being a member of the East Milton Neighborhood Association, and at least 1 residing in precinct 6 and 1 residing in precinct 7. So
I might have misheard it, then I thought it was 2. I'm sorry.
You mentioned you didn't have it in front of you, so I thought that might be helpful. If
Yeah,
it is.
I had suggested, Arthur, maybe going to 2 since we were adding a member, 2 from the East Milton Neighborhood Associations. But again, if we want to just go with 1 and it gives us a little more flexibility, maybe that's the better way to go. So we would say exactly as you just read it, Arthur. at least one from the East Milton Neighborhood Association, with at least one from Precinct 6 and at least one from Precinct 7.
That seems prudent. What do you think, Richard?
I agree. I'm fine with that. I as you know, Arthur, I don't think you're gonna have any trouble, Madam Chair. I think this will be filled in an hour.
Great.
You know, I think it'll be very quick.
That's what we like. Well, I also like that because it says at least one, so that if that ends up being filled with two, that will work as well. But, okay. So that's it. We can vote now. Okay, everybody's ready. Ms. Conlon, all those in favor? Sorry, Ms. Conlon.
Yes.
Mr. Doyle.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
Mr. Zulus.
Yes.
And yes. Thank you very much, everyone.
I have all the changes.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Zulus, for proposing this and keeping track of what it is now. Great. Okay. Next, appointment of Michael Zulus to the Finance Committee. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint Mike Zulus to the Finance Committee.
With a term expiring September 30th.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
In perpetuity.
Thanks a lot.
Emeritus.
Thanks a lot.
I'll second the
Sorry.
motion.
Sorry.
I think the motion is through June 30th, 2021, not in perpetuity.
Yes, you know, could I just point out something? I realize, I think we had a little difficulty with some additions to the agenda because I don't see Ms. Conlon also.
I have it. It's there.
You-
It's for the pilot committee?
No, for finance. I
No,
resigned,
you're right. I don't see that.
and so are we able to just add that? Because that would not be.
I'm guessing not, since it's specifically listed, Mike, but am I still on it because we haven't, for having previously been appointed and.
Right, okay, so we're all right. Okay,
Madam Chair, I think your term was through July, I think. So I
Through
think
July?
I think you were reinstated for another July, but let me check with Jennifer in the morning.
okay, no, I
Okay.
think you're right. So,
You can come to the meeting anyway. We'll let you in.
okay.
Oh, my God.
My policy appointment isn't on there either, so I've got those for the next, yeah, hopefully we can. Okay, great.
Madam Chair, did you want to note that you're stepping down and I'm going to be stepping off policy?
Yes, we're going to be changing places. I'm going to be stepping off the Finance Committee and onto policy, and I hopefully you'll still allow me to work on financial policies. I have a nice big stack of things, and I'm looking forward to working with Mr. Zulus to maybe get some policies in place. And he was very busy last year, chairing. Had a very difficult time.
And
So-
I'd like to thank Melinda and recognize all the work she did on the Finance Committee. We had talked initially about me stepping down and Melinda staying on, and Melinda and I had a few conversations about it. And, you know, it's, the chair of the board is extraordinarily busy in any given year. And Melinda is also the chair of the Housing Committee, and there's a lot going on that front. And so we thought it might make sense to, that I would stay on finance and Melinda would step down and move on to policy, and I'll step off that one. We haven't had a meeting since I was appointed to that, so that's really just a technicality of stepping down from that. But Melinda did so much. Melinda, you've done so much work on the Finance Committee, and I think you've been such a huge asset on the committee. I'm sorry we're going to be losing you, but I think we posted for Friday morning for a meeting of the full board so that Melinda, Mike, and I can be there. Richard or Arthur are certainly welcome since we're posted, but we need to approve some meeting minutes, and we thought going forward we might post some of them as joint meetings of the Finance Committee and the full board so that others can take part in the budget discussions. So, Melinda, I've enjoyed working with you over these past 2 years on the Finance Committee. And thank you for all of your contributions to that committee.
Well, thank you, Katie. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm glad I'll still have an opportunity to, see firsthand what's going on but I've learned so much from you, and not just about the finances of the town and how to work with everyone in town hall and in the schools, but also about chairing a great committee. You've done such a wonderful job, and
Thank you.
I've appreciated it. And also being on there with Mr. Dennehy and Amy Dexter. So I've really, it's a wonderful way to see how the town really works from financial aspects. Arthur, I mean, Richard has been through this as a department head, but I highly encourage you to attend if you are curious and you'd like to, because it's a good group and there's a lot to learn. And so, Mike, I'm glad you're going to be joining the committee. We had a chance to have you in a couple of meetings last year, and you stood in for Katie, and were your usual dynamic self, and also huge contributor. So thank you. So the two of you are going to be, we have two big contributors on the finance committee. So thank you. That's great. So I have a motion and a second. I don't believe we voted yet. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Would you like to abstain, Mr. Zulus?
I'll vote for myself. I was just thinking I need to get my wife to start referring to me as dynamic. I think that's a pretty good adjective.
Oh my God. You guys drinking wine or something tonight?
And that restaurant already opened for Mike.
I know.
Wild boar.
Wild boar.
That's right. Oh.
Marion, but okay. And Ms. Collins, yes. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Excuse me. Next, appointment of Katie Conlon to the Payment in Lieu of Taxes Committee.
I'll make a motion to appoint Katie. Oh, go ahead, Michael. Go
No,
ahead.
you can do it, Richard.
I'll make a motion to appoint Katie Conlon to the Payment in Lieu of Taxes, also known as Pilot Committee, with a term expiring June 30th, 2030. No, 2021. I'm kidding.
Hopefully we won't need it into 2030.
Yeah. That's a dream. That's okay.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
I'll abstain if
Okay.
that's what Kevin suggested.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Collins, yes, and I'm very much looking forward to your work on that committee. I know this is a tough time to be stepping in there, so thank you. Okay, now we have reappointment to, the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. That's what I thought this was. I think I'll make this motion. It's a long one, and I'll give you all a break. To reappoint, I move to reappoint the select board members. Select board member Richard Wells Jr., town accountant Amy Dexter, director of Consolidated Facilities William Ritchie, planning board member April Anderson, library trustee John Focarelli, school committee member Elaine Craighead, community at large member Lorraine D., community at large member Michael Hale, and to appoint warrant committee member Kathleen A. Cassis to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. And this is a term of 1 year, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
I'll
Ms.
abstain. I'll abstain.
Okay. Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. This is a very important advisory committee for us, and that it does so much work, and really is something I'm so glad to see that we're doing. When I was on the Conservation Commission, we didn't have a capital planning committee, and it's been a real asset.
Madam Chair, could I'd like to just especially recognize Lorraine D., who's one of the two community at large members. I served on the warrant committee many years ago with Lorraine, and she's been on this committee for ages. So she's given quite a bit back to the town, and I think, I'm sure does a wonderful job on this committee, knowing Lorraine. So I think Michael Hale might have replaced someone more recently, but Lorraine she's going to be on this committee for close to a decade.
Oh, wow.
if not longer than that. So
I believe Lorraine is the only member left that was on the committee when I was a department head that is there now as I am a member.
Wow.
she's been serving a long time. Thank you to Lorraine
Well, thank you. Yeah.
and to Michael Hale.
Yes, because we do need community members involved in these decisions, and their perspectives are important. So, so next up, item 20, use of the town green and gazebo for a private Halloween party. So as part of our application process, we do hear from fire and police, Board of Health, and DPW if necessary. I believe that everyone has had a chance to look at the application for a Halloween party. We also received a letter from the Board of Health, and I did ask Jen McCullough to contact the applicant to let them know that the Board of Health does not support the application as they consider it a high-risk activity, which should be avoided to prevent the spread of the virus that causes COVID-19. So I didn't know what that would mean for our discussion. You know, I'll say I'm a little confused. I had initially thought that it would be viewed similar to something like a wedding or something like that, but there seem to be other concerns, and the police
Madam
chief.
Chair, I support the Board of Health and the chiefs in this, especially the Board of Health's opinion. I mean, I get it. You know, we all crave whatever social aspect of our lives that we would consider normal to have them back. But and to back to Mr. Zulis's point earlier tonight about just the levels and how they're rising, and especially amongst our young people, I just think we have to say just not this year. You know, hopefully next year we're in a totally different COVID-free world by next October.
Mr. Zulis, you raised your hand.
I agree. I agree with supporting the Board of Health on this, and the chief.
Well, the chief actually didn't have concerns.
Yeah, particularly the Board of Health. Though I agree, and I agree. The Board of Health. This is. We asked them to weigh in. They weighed in. My view is that I support the Board of Health on this.
Mr. Dennehy?
Yeah, I think I just add a little bit of content to it, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the Board of Health, but the application was for the day of Halloween. So any type of event on the town green could be misleading and unfortunately attract a crowd that would be, that would inhibit or prohibit social distancing. So I think that had a lot to do with it, with the fact that it was going to be on Halloween itself with a Halloween themed type party that may attract some passerbys. And so many people use Town Green in non-COVID days for activities and all the concerts we had on there that it may have misled many of the passerbys to think that it was actually a town-sponsored event and lead to some COVID-related issues. So
I did wonder how you would keep it a private party, but I think you just answered that question. It would not be possible. Mr. Doyle, you raised your hand.
No, Madam Chair, I'm fine with Mike Dennehy's point.
Okay, thank you.
I think they sum it up nicely.
Thank you. Ms. Conlon?
I have to say I was a little conflicted on this because we're talking about toddlers and they've said it's going to be 9 to 15 people and they're going to practice social distancing. But I do want to support the Board of Health. I'm just really wondering if the Board of Health or the health director had the applicant into a meeting or had any additional questions or information from him. And I'm wondering if there's any changes that he could make to his proposal that might satisfy the Board of Health. I don't know, perhaps not. So I'll go along with the majority in supporting the Board of Health, but and their recommendation. I understand the point Mr. Dennehy made, which is a good one. But at the same time, it sounds as though the applicant was anticipating some of these and was making some plans to try to keep this a socially distanced event. And it's an outdoor event, and it's very young children, not the type that the parents can control if we're talking about toddlers rather than middle schoolers or high schoolers who have a little more ability to perhaps violate some of the social distancing. So I'll vote with the majority to support the Board of Health's recommendation, but I wonder whether maybe a phone call to the applicant to see if there's any other ways that they could address some of the concerns might be possible. I don't know. Maybe it's too late for that.
Mr. Dennehy?
Jen McCullough will be reaching back out to the applicant, so I'll follow up and see if there's something that could be modified and if the Board of Health would be able to take another look at it.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're not going to approve the application. Do we have to reject the application or just not approve it? I believe we just don't approve it. Yeah. Okay. Next is approval of the November election warrant. And did everyone had a chance to?
I'll move that we approve and issue the warrant for the November 3rd, 2020 election.
Second.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Absolutely.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes, excellent. Future meetings. So October 21st is our next standing meeting, but we do have our retreat on the 17th, and we have our site walk on the 24th. And I think that's it. Mr. Dennehy?
Madam Chair, we are posted for a full board on Friday for the Finance Committee at 8:15.
That's true. Thank you for reminding me.
And we did post at 9:30 on Friday for potentially speaking about the common vic license for the wonderful group that presented this evening. I think it would make more sense to post for the public hearing for the liquor license and hear both the common vic and the liquor license on the same night, if that makes sense, and
Right.
cancel a Friday at 9:30.
Yes. So we'll be doing that on the 21st. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if we look into November, it's then the 4th and the 18th, I believe. So. Okay, Town Administrator report, Mr. Dennehy.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. A couple of quick things. I did get an update from our Public Works group. There's currently 1,100 residents without electricity at this time. We have full support of Eversource at this time. There are 2 crews and a tree crew out there, and several Public Works crews out there working with our public safety group to restore power and get a lot of these trees moved. Member Zulus will be happy to know that they are currently on Taylor and Magnolia, removing those big trees that fell. But
I was going to mention that. I can hear them. I can hear the chainsaws, and they're doing a great job, and I really appreciate it. The EPW is doing a fabulous job. It's not a pleasant night to be outside, and they're doing a great job.
Thank you. Yes, it was about 10% of our community lost power this evening, and they're being restored as they get these trees and wires back to normal. 2 other things. A week from Saturday is October 17th. Early voting starts for our federal election. It'll be 2 weeks in the Blute Room in the cellar of Town Hall, very similar to the way the clerk successfully ran the primary back in September. So October 17th, ending October 30th, so there'll be 2 weekends involved in that. We anticipate the residents receiving their vote by mail applications from Secretary of State any day now, and those that want to choose that way to vote in the upcoming and important election can do so that way. And lastly, the Health Department, I just want to reiterate that on Thursday, October 22nd, from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Council on Aging, our Health Department will be hosting their annual flu clinic. We do ask that from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. be reserved for our seniors. If you have any more information, feel free to call our Health Department at 617-898-4886. So again, that's Thursday, October 22nd, from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., 10 Walnut Street, Council on Aging. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, my mother received a call today from Christine Stanton at the COA and highlighting the flu clinic. So that's wonderful. Topics the chair did not reasonably anticipate. Actually, today, and this is why it's not posted, we received 2 project eligibility applications for 40B developments at 936 Brush Hill Road and 16 Amore Road. So we will be collecting comments from boards, committees, and departments in relation to these, as we have done with other project eligibility letter applications. And I think in the past, we have had Judy Barrett put our comments together, and we'll need to decide fairly quickly because the deadline is November 9th. We'll need to decide fairly quickly. I think if we're going to be having Ms. Barrett work on these again with our planning director, and so we may need to confer with him as well and see what his schedule is like, and also what the board members would like to do. And we'll be adding this to our next meeting as well, so that so we need to get the applications and the letters up on the website in the customary place for PELs, and then we'll be able to have people weigh in on them. Okay, thank you. So I do have a member report from Mr. Doyle. I don't know if we have any other member reports, but
I do, Madam Chair, and I'll go last.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Doyle has a member's report on the Master Plan Implementation Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Master Plan Implementation Committee has, in its recent work, reviewed the town center planning. It has had an orientation and an update on the Community Preservation Act initiative, elected its officers, with Cheryl Tsujias being reelected as chair of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. It has appointed me to serve as the representative to the Housing Committee, and it has had an in-depth discussion of parking situation around the new town center, with a survey being conducted by the planning department here in town. The chair of the Master Plan Implementation Committee looks forward to an opportunity in the future to meet with the select board and have a joint discussion of directions to be taken. The Master Plan Implementation Committee has also reviewed its digest of activities and decided to work on a program of consolidating those activities into critical areas, with the designation of representatives for those areas being made. I, for example, would be the liaison with the select board on the items that would fall under the select board categories. And during that discussion, we'd have an opportunity to flesh them out and prioritize them for action in the near future and in the long term. So that's it, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you very
Any
much.
questions? I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions from members? Okay. Mr. Wells?
Just before, I know Richard wants to go last, just before, I just want to emphasize again, I want to thank Tommy McCarthy and the DPW crews who are working hard outside my window right now on Taylor Road.
They must have moved from Reedsdale over to Taylor.
Thank you. Mr. Wells? We need a feature in Zoom where you can ping people. Mr. Wells, we're ready to hear.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry, Madam Chair. Just to play off what Mr. Zuer said, again, to the DPW that's done yeoman's work this past week. We've had two really significant storms, and the Shade Tree Advisory Committee be impressed with my knowledge of this tonight is that part of the reason we're seeing so much damage with our trees when the wind blows is because of the drought. The trees are just so dry, and they just snap like twigs. And there's one member of the DPW, I don't know his name, but in this storm that hit the other morning, several trees came down on Granite Place. One actually took out a car completely, but Crane Park, they were snapping like twigs. And this one employee came out of nowhere. I don't even know his name, and I know almost all of them, with a chainsaw, and was out there. I actually yelled at him. I said, go back and get a helmet. But to Mike Dennehy's point, that's the type of work that they do, and they do a great job. And I just want to reiterate what Michael and Katie have said tonight. Next, on a more important note, and I ask if you would, I don't ask for many things on the agenda, but I would ask if you would consider this on the 21st. This is Domestic Violence Month, and domestic violence is and continues to be one of the most significant crimes that occurs not just in our community, but in the state and this country. Domestic related homicides are one of the highest categories. We are very fortunate, Chief King and his staff, very fortunate that the town has a relationship in a collaboration with Domestic Violence and a Dove and an advocate that works out of the Milton Police Station every day. Her name is Julie Thermidor, and I think it'd be prudent in this important month that occurs each year at our next meeting to have her come in and just kind of touch a little bit on maybe 5 or 10 minutes on the work that she does in this town. I've always said in policing, with regard to domestic violence, you could ride around in a mock patrol car all day long, 365 days in a year, from the nicest neighborhoods to the most densely populated neighborhoods in this town, and you probably wouldn't see a domestic happen, but they do occur, and they are pretty significant. So I would ask if you would consider adding her to the agenda. I've already given the information to Hillary, and Chief King would support that for the 21st, given this important month. And finally, it's very rare that I go back to the police department. That's a past chapter in my life, but each year to meet my LEOSA, which are there's a federal criteria that every active and retired officer staff to have. And I go back each year for 1 day of training. And today was my day. And I really want to give credit to the 3 young officers who ran this. It was down in Easton, Jason Sullivan, Mark Simildoro, and Michael Grant. Particularly, this is a tough time to be in policing, and I don't think people realize how much police officers truly embrace the sanctity of human life, even in situations where they many times are placed in a condition where the threat to human life exists, and they may have to act themselves. So I just want to give a shout out to them. These are things that most people don't get to see, and because I was there today, I just wanted to thank them for a great job that they did, and I was pleased after having spent so much of my time working there and growing up there to stand from a distance at the end of the day and just watch the work of these fine people going on. So thank you. I was long-winded tonight.
Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing Domestic Violence Month to our attention and the suggestion. We I'm sure we'd all very much like to have Ms. Thermidor come in and speak with us. No public comment. Does anyone have any other future agenda items? You can always email or call, forward them to Mr. Dennehy. At this time, I move pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, subsection A, subsection 3, sometimes called Purpose 6, that the Select Board enter into executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, specifically the Kidder Library and 41 Wharf Street, based on my belief that having these discussions in open session would have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of this body, and not to return to open session.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Collins, yes. Thank you and good night, everyone.